had the amazing experience of growing up in Nashville. At one point in my life, there were 5 generations of my family alive. And my great-grandmother was well into her 90s when she passed away, lots of great aunts and great uncles, and I don't recall anyone having dementia until my mom and my dad were diagnosed.
If you remember from chemistry class, for every action there's a reaction, and so it is with behaviors. So an action on the part of the person with dementia or the caregiver has a reaction. Some of the reactions are positive ones, and some maybe not so positive. One of the things that as a caregiver you need to think about is what's happening in the brain. As our cognitive abilities decline and the brain changes, the filters that we often have used in the past to control our anger, those filters disappear. And they disappear over a period of time. It's not like overnight. And so when people start behaving violently or cursing at you or saying, I wish you'd never been born, those kind of hurtful things, you just have to remember it's the disease talking and not the person. You need to step back and look at a variety of things. One is the environment. Is it too overstimulating? Because we know that people with dementia can't deal with much stimulation. It has to be in very small amounts, and people, of course, have different tolerances, but we need to be sure the environment is not overstimulated. Now, just as an example, the person with dementia may hear a voice on TV talking angrily and may not realize that that is somebody on the television and may think it's coming from you or some unknown, unseen person, and may react in an angry way because that environment. So think about it. Maybe you need to turn off the television so that those kinds of factors don't influence the behavior. To deal with this kind of unexpected, unexplained behavior takes a lot of understanding on the part of the person who is caring, because the person with the behaviors doesn't have the ability to say, I'm not going to do that anymore. It's not rational, I'm going to do this because of something that somebody did. It's just that they're frustrated. Often they can't communicate verbally anymore. So this is a form of communication to say, I'm not happy in this situation. So I might kick, I might punch, and it may just come out of the blue. It might not be like a leading up to a pot boiling over. It's just happens. Why is this stranger giving me a bath? I'm gonna just hit her so she'll go away, because they don't recognize that person. But it's not something they can control. I think that's really important to know, that it's not a personal act of agitation. It is the disease. So you have to be vigilant, particularly in that stage. Often what caregivers do is go to the doctor and say, I want medicine for my loved one to decrease these behaviors. I think that should be the last resort. When the reactive behavior becomes a pattern and happens frequently, then the caregiver may need to consult with a physician about other options, perhaps somebody to come in and give them some respite so they can get away from that situation. They may need to think about alternative living arrangements so that people who are trained to deal with people who have reactive behaviors can more effectively deal with it, and there's not that emotional baggage that a loved one has with the person with dementia. So there are lots of options, and you have to just think about what they are and when they're needed. Sometimes short-term stays are, good. Adult day evening programs can be helpful to get people into a social situation so they're not so isolated. But it's very important for the caregiver not to get burned out, because then you can't really look at things objectively. It's not any use to say to the person with dementia, you can't hit me, you can't yell at me, you can't, because that is, the verbal part is not getting through. So really all the pressure is on the caregiver to figure out how to make those opportunities of acting out be fewer and fewer. And one of the things that we know is if people are engaged, they're less likely to be acting out. We know that support groups are very helpful because you're talking to people who are going through the same things that you are. And so you can learn from them, you can lean on them, you can share your struggles and your successes with them. And we find caregiver support groups to be a wonderful part of this process.
Our support groups have turned out to be very essential for the families that we work with. We have a family support group here at Abe's Garden that meets monthly. Within that group, we have folks that have their loved ones here, and they're either spouses or children of the folks that are here, and they've become quite close. In fact, from the support group, we normally have up to 20 people in the support group. Spouses have kind of connected, and they meet outside of the support group and do lunch and help one another because the struggles are different. It's just amazing the support they give one another, and it's upbeat. We may be talking about grieving, because with dementia, you grieve. We may be talking about that, but toward the end of the group, it's just such a supportive environment, and it's so important to reach out and get that support so that you don't feel like you're doing it alone. And what I hear from families is that within the support group, they realize, man, I think that too, or I feel that way too, and how validating that is to not feel alone and, not knowing what to do.
One of the topics that we encourage people to develop are their coping skills. When this happens, what will I do? Think about it ahead of time. Be creative. Think about what works most of the time, and then think about what works some of the time, and have both of those in your toolkit to pull out, because every day's different. And so a coping skill that works on Tuesday might not work on Wednesday morning. So you have to be creative and think ahead of time.
I can't imagine life without you. When I can't breathe, you breathe for me.
So just one closing thought, and that is relationships is the key to all of our reasons to live. And so whether or not the reactive behaviors of your loved ones have been tough, they still need to be touched to know that they're loved. Their behaviors should not reflect on how you feel about them, because their behaviors are not them. It's the disease. And so the relationship that you continue to have in a very intimate, personal way is really what counts. And so one of the coping skills is to try to put the reactive behaviors to the side and remember what the prize is, and that is to have the best quality of life throughout this time together.
Oh, when I can't breathe.
You want to love and respect them and find a lifestyle that accomplishes that.
You breathe for me.
And that is a slippery slope with dementia. requires a lot of support,
Breathe for me.
but we can care for and love the people that we've respected all their lives.
Breathe